Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam President and Madam Minister Brnjac. Ladies and gentlemen, here before you in this House and elsewhere, I've always spoken the truth regarding the numerous consequences of Brexit across the board in all sectors. And I honour that commitment to speak the truth. And we all know, ladies and gentlemen, that with all the motivations for Brexit, what really drove the Brexiteers themselves, well, there are two fundamental reasons, amongst others. The first is that they wanted to regain the power to diverge on social, environmental and tax rules, which lie at the heart of the European single market as the EU ecosystem. And the second reason, this has been clearly recalled this morning, is that they wanted to do away with the freedom of movement for men and women who, since the beginning of the European project, have been at the heart of that project. Those are the two things that really motivated the Brexiteers and which we now have to address. And there are considerable consequences with regard to the future as a result of this. A number of you have mentioned this, and of course we'll be talking about this in future negotiations. There will be practical consequences with regard to, as of the end of the transition period on the 31st of December this year. There will be consequences, and then economically speaking, and in terms of professional qualifications and the right to establish oneself, and in terms of security as well. On both sides, we must not underestimate, and I say again, on both sides, we must not underestimate the direct consequences of doing away with the freedom of movement, which is at the heart of the Brexit debate. So that is as far as the future negotiations, which will be commencing at the beginning of March. But for the time being, we're talking about citizens' rights, which have been and are the priority of this Parliament and of the EU side negotiator who's speaking to you now. I'd like to thank you for that. This has also been a priority for all of the member states that you represent. And I would like to thank Guy Verhofstadt and all of your colleagues for this resolution, which I think is very clear, that will be put to the vote tomorrow. It sets out your concerns and your solidarity vis-à-vis EU citizens who will be affected by the direct consequences of Brexit. And I think that Guy Verhofstadt will make use of this vote in the meetings that he will be holding in London this week as well. As President von der Leyen said earlier on, our citizens need certainty with regard to their futures and the futures of their families. They need to know what Brexit will mean for them in their day-to-day lives. Objectively speaking, I think that the withdrawal agreement that we have today before us does provide that certainty for British citizens residing in one of the 27 EU member states with regard to the rights that they will have acquired before the end of the transition period at the end of this year. And they will therefore be able to continue living their lives as they did before in their countries of residence. And then that applies equally to the more than 3.5 million EU citizens who are residing in the UK and contributing to the British economy and to Britain's progress. All of these citizens must be able to continue to live, to study, to work, and to receive benefits, and to bring their family to join them. And this should be a right that they should enjoy throughout their lives. This is what is set out in the treaty, and we are discussing a treaty here with all of the legal force that implies. We must now work towards proper implementation of these rights, and we won't be accepting any half measures or any form of disguised or veiled discrimination. And my responsibility and that of my team is to ensure, under the aegis of the Commission and the President of the Commission, is to ensure that there is proper and full implementation of this agreement, and therefore I would invite you all to be part of that process. I will come and report back to you here with regard to the implementation of the treaty. And we will, of course, work to continue to fight the interests of our citizens. And I'd like to thank the 27 embassies representing the 27 member states in London for their work. They're working with the European Commission, and I thank them for their work.
Interests of our citizens. And we will do everything in our power to ensure the full implementation of the withdrawal agreement. The Commission will do its utmost to ensure that the rights of 1 million British citizens living in the 27 member states are guaranteed, that each and every one of them is properly informed and supported. And we will watch closely to ensure that the UK government does the same for the 3.5 million EU citizens residing in the UK. Indeed, the early implementation of the EU settlement scheme by the UK has already led to the identification of a series of concerns raised in particular by citizens' organisations, but also today by many of you, as the personal case of Emmanuel mentioned by Caroline Vauden among you. The Commission will be particularly alert to EU citizens encountering difficulties in obtaining the new residence status. We expect the UK to help EU citizens to meet administrative requirements, as well as to accept requests failing to meet the deadline for good reasons. We are already in regular contact with our UK counterparts on these issues, and I have held a number of constructive exchanges with Stephen Barclay, the UK Secretary of State for exiting the EU, on this matter. I have and I will continue to insist in particular on the importance of the UK putting in place a strong, independent monitoring authority mentioned by Claude Moraes a few minutes ago, an authority that must be able to act rapidly and fairly when faced with complaints from Union citizens and their family. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, let me just conclude with a few words on the bigger picture regarding this agreement that has now been approved by the House of Commons and will be submitted to you for your approval on the 29th of January. In addition to dissident rights, there are many, many other topics where we must remain vigilant, included in this withdrawal agreement. And I am thinking in particular about the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, which guarantees the integrity of the single market, but also preserves the whole island economy and prevents the return of a hard border. I just want to say that the implementation of this protocol foresees checks and controls for goods entering the island of Ireland. I look forward to a constructive cooperation with the UK authorities to ensure that all the provisions set out in this agreement are respected and made operational. Thank you very much for your attention.